The afternoon sun painted the sky in golden hues as Finn walked home after another day at school. His steps were light, almost bouncy, reflecting the tireless energy of his 9 years. The boy with tousled brown hair and bright green eyes carried a backpack bigger than himself, full of books and children's dreams. The streets of the lower middle-class suburb where Finn lived were familiar to him. Modest houses lined the streets, some with peeling paint, others with manicured gardens, little oases of hope in the midst of the daily struggle. The scent of jasmine in the air mingled with the aroma of fresh bread from the corner bakery, creating an olfactory symphony that was the soundtrack of his childhood. As he approached the bus stop, Finn noticed something unusual. A woman was standing there, frantically rummaging through her handbag. Her eyes were wide with panic, and her hands were shaking slightly. Finn felt a pang in his chest, that feeling that always came over him when he saw someone in trouble. "Excuse me, ma'am," Finn said, his childish voice breaking the tense silence. "Is everything all right?" The woman looked at him in surprise. Her blue eyes were misty, and a lock of blonde hair fell over her face. "Oh dear," she replied, her voice trembling. I think I've lost my wallet. I don't have any money for the ticket." Finn felt his heart squeeze. Without hesitating, he opened the front pocket of his backpack and took out the coins his mother had given him for a snack. "Here," he said, holding out his hand. "You can use this for the ticket." The woman looked at Finn's outstretched hand, her eyes wide with surprise and excitement. "Oh no, dear. I can't take your lunch money." But Finn insisted, his smile lighting up his freckled face. "Please take it. My mother always says we should help when we can." Just then, the bus arrived, its doors opening with a squeak. The woman, whom Finn didn't know to be Aurora, looked from the bus to the boy, undecided. With tears in her eyes, she accepted the coins. "What's your name, little angel?" she asked, her voice tinged with emotion. "Finn," he replied, his smile even wider. "Thank you, Finn," Aurora said, climbing onto the bus. "You don't know how much this means to me." As the bus pulled away, Finn felt a wave of warmth in his chest. He couldn't explain it, but something told him that this small gesture would mean much more than he could have imagined. The next day, Finn woke up to the sound of excited voices coming from the living room. Curious, he got up, still in his pajamas, and went to investigate. When he reached the front door, his eyes widened in amazement. Parked in front of his modest house was a car that looked like it had come straight out of a movie. Shiny, elegant, and obviously expensive, the vehicle stood out from the crowd. Next to the car, talking to his parents, was a tall, well-dressed man. "Finn!" his mother, Clara, called out when she saw him. "Come here, dear. There's someone who wants to meet you." Timidly, Finn approached. The elegant man turned to him, a warm smile on his face. "So this is the young hero," the man said, his voice deep and gentle. "Pleased to meet you, Finn. My name is Mr. Alden." Finn looked at his parents, confused. His father, Liam, looked equally perplexed, but his mother had a glint of pride in her eyes. "Finn," Mr. Alden continued, crouching down to be at the boy's eye level. "Yesterday you helped a woman at the bus stop. That woman was my daughter, Aurora." Finn's eyes widened with recognition. "Is she all right?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. Mr. Alden smiled, touched by the boy's genuine concern. "Yes, thanks to you. Your little act of kindness meant more than you can imagine. Aurora was going through a very difficult time, and your kindness was like a ray of sunshine on a cloudy day." Finn blushed, unaccustomed to such praise. "I only did what I thought was right," he muttered. "And that's exactly why I'm here," Mr. Alden said, standing up. He turned to Liam and Clara. "As I was saying, I'd like to offer your husband an opportunity, Mrs. Walker. My company is looking for a talented cabinet maker for a new luxury furniture project. And I've heard that Liam is one of the best in the area." Liam looked stunned. I don't know what to say," he stammered. "Say yes," Mr. Alden smiled. "Consider it my way of saying thank you for what your son has done. Sometimes a small act of kindness can set off a chain reaction of good things." As the adults continued their conversation, Finn stood there, watching. He didn't fully understand what was happening, but he could feel the electricity in the air, the sense that something big was about to change in their lives. That night, lying in his bed, Finn reflected on the day's events. He thought about the woman, Aurora, and how such a simple gesture could have such a huge impact. He thought of his father and the opportunity that had come out of nowhere. And he thought of himself, an ordinary 9-year-old boy who had somehow become the catalyst for it all. As sleep enveloped him, Finn smiled. He didn't know what the future held, but he had a feeling it would be something wonderful. And it all started with a few coins and a heart willing to help. Dawn was painting the sky in soft shades of pink and orange when Liam Walker woke up, his body still heavy with sleep and his mind filled with the memories of the day before. Beside him, Clara slept soundly, her serene face contrasting with the storm of emotions that raged inside Liam. He stood up silently, his bare feet touching the cold floor. He crossed the narrow corridor to the kitchen, where the dim light of the rising sun seeped through the faded curtains. Liam turned on the kettle, the familiar aroma of coffee filling the air, anchoring him in the reality of his everyday life. While he waited for the coffee to brew, Liam let his mind wander back to the events of the previous day. Mr. Alden's unexpected arrival, the luxury car that seemed out of place on his modest street, and the proposal that still echoed in his ears. An opportunity that could change everything. The soft sound of footsteps interrupted her thoughts. Finn entered the kitchen, his eyes still sleepy, but shining with the characteristic curiosity of a child. "Morning, Dad," Finn said, his voice still hoarse from sleep. Liam smiled, feeling a surge of pride and love as he looked at his son. "Morning, champ. Sleep well?" Finn nodded, taking a seat at the kitchen table. "Dad, what's going to happen now, with the job that man offered?" Liam sighed, pouring himself a cup of coffee and Finn a glass of milk. He sat facing his son, their eyes meeting across the worn table. "I don't know, Finn," he admitted. "It's a great opportunity, but also a big risk. Leaving the job I have now, changing our whole life." Finn took a sip of his milk, leaving a white stain above his upper lip. "But isn't that what you've always wanted? To work with real furniture, not just fixing old things?" Finn's words hit Liam like a punch in the gut. His son was right. For years, Liam had dreamed of creating truly beautiful furniture, pieces that would last for generations. But the fear of failure, the responsibility of supporting a family, had always kept him tied to the safe, the known. At that moment, Clara entered the kitchen, her eyes immediately picking up on the tension in the air. "What's going on here?" she asked, her soft voice breaking the silence. Liam looked at his wife, seeing in her the same strength and determination that had made him fall in love years ago. "We're discussing Mr. Alden's proposal," he said. Clara sat down, joining them at the table. "And what are you thinking?" Liam hesitated, the words stuck in his throat. I want to accept," he finally admitted. "But I'm scared. What if I'm not good enough? What if we fail and lose everything?" Clara held out her hand, her fingers intertwining with Liam's. "Love, you're the most talented woodworker I know. You deserve this chance. We deserve this chance." Finn, watching the exchange between his parents, felt a wave of emotion wash over him. "Dad," he said, his voice small but firm, "remember what you always tell me, that you only really lose when you don't try?" Liam looked at his son, surprised and touched by the wisdom in his words. He felt something change inside him, as if an invisible barrier had been broken down. "You're right, champ," Liam said, a smile forming on his lips. "You're both right." At that moment, as if the universe was listening to their conversation, the phone rang. Clara answered, her eyes widening as she recognized the voice on the other end of the line. "Mr. Walker?" Mr. Alden's elegant voice sounded through the handset. "I hope I'm not calling too soon. I was wondering if you'd had time to consider my proposal." Liam looked at Clara, then at Finn. In his family's eyes, he saw trust, love, and hope. With a nod to Clara, he picked up the phone. "Mr. Alden," Liam said, his voice firm despite the nervousness he felt. "I accept your offer. When can I start?" On the other end of the line, Mr. Alden smiled. "Excellent, Mr. Walker. How about we start today? I have a project I think you'll love." After hanging up the phone, Liam found himself wrapped in Clara and Finn's tight embrace. The fear was still there, lurking at the edges of his mind, but it was outweighed by the excitement and anticipation of what was to come. As he prepared to leave, Liam couldn't help noticing how different his house looked that morning. The faded walls, the worn furniture, everything seemed imbued with a new light, a promise of change and possibilities. On the way to Mr. Alden's car, which was waiting for him in front of the house, Liam stopped and turned to Finn. "Son," he said, kneeling down to be at the boy's eye level, "I want you to know that I'm very proud of you. Your little act of kindness not only helped that woman, but is changing our lives. Never forget the power that a gesture of kindness can have." Finn smiled, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "I love you, Dad," he said simply. Liam hugged his son one last time before getting into Mr. Alden's car. As the vehicle drove away, Liam looked through the rearview mirror, seeing Clara and Finn waving from the doorway. His heart filled with a mixture of emotions: fear, hope, gratitude, and above all, love. As the familiar landscape of his neighborhood gave way to parts of the city he rarely visited, Liam felt he was on the threshold of something big. A new phase of his life was beginning, all thanks to the kindness of his son and the generosity of a stranger. Mr. Alden, noticing Liam's thoughtful gaze, smiled gently. "You know, Mr. Walker," he said, "I believe that the universe sometimes presents us with opportunities disguised as challenges. What your son did, what you're doing now. These are choices that shape not only our lives, but the lives of those around us." Liam nodded, Mr. Alden's words echoing in his mind. As the car sped off into the unknown, Liam felt a sense of peace envelop him. No matter what the future held, he knew he would face it with courage, inspired by his son's example and supported by his family's love. The day was just beginning, but for the Walker family, it was the start of a new life. A life shaped by kindness, courage, and faith in the transformative power of a simple act of kindness. The afternoon sun streamed through the large windows of the art studio, bathing the space in a warm golden light. Aurora was standing in front of a blank canvas, her brush suspended in the air, hesitant. Her blue eyes, once full of uncertainty, now shone with a new determination. The soft sound of footsteps behind her made her turn around. Finn stood there, his green eyes wide with admiration as he surveyed the space filled with canvases, brushes, and vibrant colors. "Wow," he whispered, his voice full of awe. "Is this where you do magic?" Aurora smiled, feeling a wave of tenderness for the boy who had unknowingly changed the course of her life. "Well, I used to," she replied, a touch of melancholy in her voice. "But now, I'm trying to rediscover that magic." Finn approached, his curious eyes scanning the sketches and unfinished paintings scattered around the studio. "Why did you stop?" he asked, with the characteristic innocence of a child. Aurora sighed, putting her brush aside and sitting down on a nearby stool. She gestured for Finn to join her. "Sometimes, Finn, life takes us down paths we didn't expect," she began, choosing her words carefully. "I had big dreams of being a famous artist, of having my works in galleries around the world. But then—" She paused, her eyes straying into a distant memory. "Then my mother became ill, very ill, and suddenly my dreams didn't seem so important anymore. I dropped everything to look after her." Finn listened intently, his eyes full of compassion beyond his years. "Is your mother better?" he asked softly. Aurora shook her head, unshed tears glistening in her eyes. "No, dear. She passed away 2 years ago, and since then I just couldn't paint again. It was as if all the color had been drained from my world." Finn reached out, gently touching Aurora's arm. "But now you're here," he said, his voice full of hope. "You're trying again." Aurora smiled through her tears, feeling a wave of gratitude for this little angel who had come into her life. "Yes, I am," she replied. "And do you know why?" Finn shook his head, curious. "Because of you, Finn," Aurora said softly. "Your little act of kindness that day. It was as if you had lit a spark inside me. It reminded me that there is still beauty and goodness in the world, and that maybe I still have something to offer through my art." Finn's eyes widened at this revelation. "I did that?" he asked in disbelief. Aurora nodded, wiping away a tear. "You did. And that's why I'm here today trying to start again. I'm preparing an exhibition, you know? It'll be my first in years." "That's incredible," Finn exclaimed, his face lighting up with a smile. "Can I see what you're doing?" Aurora hesitated for a moment, then smiled. "Of course you can. In fact, how about you help me?" She got up and walked over to a cupboard, from where she took out a blank canvas and some pots of paint. She placed them on the floor and gestured for Finn to join her. "What do you think we should paint?" she asked, her eyes shining with a new energy. Finn thought for a moment. Then his eyes lit up. "How about hope?" he suggested. Aurora felt her heart expand at the boy's words. "Hope," she repeated, savoring the word. "It's perfect, Finn." Together, they began to paint. Aurora gently guided Finn's hands, showing him how to mix the colors and create shapes. What began as random scribbles soon began to take shape. A bright sunrise emerging from a dark sky, rays of golden light penetrating the clouds. As they worked, Aurora felt something awaken inside her. It was as if each brushstroke was not only creating an image on the canvas, but also rebuilding something in her heart that had been broken long ago. "You know, Finn," she said as they painted, "sometimes life can be very difficult. It can seem like everything is dark and hopeless. But then someone like you comes along. Someone who, with a simple act of kindness, can light up someone else's whole world." Finn looked at her, his eyes full of understanding beyond his years. "Like the sun in our painting?" he asked. Aurora smiled, feeling tears of gratitude in her eyes. "Exactly like the sun in our painting." When they had finished, they stood back to admire their work. The canvas now displayed a stunning scene, a vibrant sunrise, with golden rays piercing a stormy sky, illuminating a field of flowers that seemed to awaken with the light. "It's beautiful," Finn whispered, his eyes wide with admiration. Aurora nodded, feeling a wave of emotion wash over her. "It's more than beautiful, Finn," she said softly. "It's the start of something new. For both of us." At that moment, the studio door opened and Mr. Alden walked in, followed by Liam. They both stopped, surprised by the scene before them. "Aurora," Mr. Alden said, his voice full of emotion as he saw his daughter standing in front of a canvas, brushes in hand, something he hadn't seen in years. Aurora turned around, a radiant smile on her face. "Dad," she said, "I think I've found my inspiration again." Mr. Alden approached, his eyes moving from the painting to Finn and back to his daughter. "This is extraordinary," he said, his voice breaking. Liam watched the scene, feeling a mixture of pride and admiration for his son. "Looks like you've had a productive day, champ," he said, smiling at Finn. Finn ran to his father, hugging him tightly. "Dad, Aurora's having an exhibition, and I helped make a painting." Liam laughed, ruffling Finn's hair. "Really? Well, it looks like we have an artist in the family, too." Aurora approached them, her face glowing with a new energy. "Mr. Walker," she said, "your son is really special. Not only did he help me that day at the bus stop, but today he helped me rediscover my passion for art." Liam looked at his son with pride. "He has a way of doing that," he said softly, "of bringing out the best in people." Mr. Alden, who had been watching silently, finally spoke. "I think we've all been touched by this young man's kindness," he said, "and now we have the opportunity to turn that kindness into something even greater." He turned to Aurora. "Darling, what do you think about turning your exhibition into a charity event? We could use the funds to create an art program for underprivileged children in the community." Aurora's eyes lit up at the idea. "Dad, that would be wonderful." While the adults discussed the details, Finn turned his attention to the painting he and Aurora had created together. He watched as the sun's rays penetrated the dark clouds, bringing light and color to the world below. At that moment, Finn understood that his small act of kindness had done just that. It had brought light into Aurora's life, who in turn was now spreading that light to others. It was like a chain reaction of kindness and hope. As the sun began to set outside, bathing the studio in golden light, Finn felt a sense of warmth and happiness spread through his chest. He didn't fully understand the impact of his actions, but he knew that something special was happening. Something that started with a few coins for a bus ticket and was now turning into something much bigger. And so, in that art studio full of colors and possibilities, a new story was beginning to be painted. A story of hope, second chances, and the transformative power of kindness. Liam Walker arrived at Mr. Alden's luxury furniture workshop. The smell of freshly cut wood and varnish filled the air, a familiar fragrance that always calmed his nerves. But today, Liam's hands trembled slightly as he put on his work apron. "Good morning, Mr. Walker." Mr. Alden's soft voice surprised him. The elegant man was standing in the doorway of the workshop, a gentle smile on his face. "Ready for your first big project?" Liam swallowed, feeling a mixture of anxiety and excitement bubble up in his stomach. "Yes, sir," he replied, his voice firmer than he felt inside. "I can't wait to get started." Mr. Alden approached, unrolling a large sheet of paper on the work table. "This is the design for a dining table that will be the centerpiece of our new collection," he explained, his fingers tracing the intricate lines of the drawing. "It's a challenging piece, Mr. Walker. It requires precision, patience, and a deep understanding of wood." Liam studied the drawing, feeling a mixture of admiration and apprehension. It was undoubtedly the most complex project he had ever tackled. Gentle curves mixed with sharp angles, creating a piece that seemed almost impossible to make in wood. It's beautiful," Liam murmured, his eyes taking in every detail. "But I don't know if I'm capable of making something like this." Mr. Alden placed a comforting hand on Liam's shoulder. "Mr. Walker, I wouldn't have brought you here if I didn't believe in your talent. Remember, every masterpiece begins with a single cut." With these words of encouragement, Liam set to work. Hours turned into days, and days into weeks. Every cut, every curve, every joint was a challenge. There were moments of intense frustration when the pieces didn't fit together perfectly or when the wood behaved unpredictably. One particularly difficult afternoon, Liam was on the verge of giving up. He looked at the half-finished table, seeing only the mistakes and imperfections. At that moment, the workshop door opened and Finn walked in, his eyes shining with excitement. "Dad!" he exclaimed, running to hug Liam. "I've come to see you work. Wow, this table is amazing." Liam looked at his son, then back at the table. Through Finn's eyes, he began to see not the mistakes, but the progress he had made. The smooth curves he had managed to carve, the way the light danced across the surface of the wood. "Do you really think so, son?" Liam asked, a hesitant smile forming on his lips. Finn nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, it's like the wood is alive. How do you do that, Dad?" Finn's innocent question triggered something in Liam. He began to explain the process to his son, how to choose the right wood, how to work with its natural characteristics rather than against them. As he spoke, Liam felt his passion for the craft reignite. "You know, Finn," he said, running his hand over the smooth surface of the table. "When I was young, I dreamed of creating pieces like this, pieces that weren't just furniture, but works of art." Finn looked at his father with admiration. "And now you're doing it, Dad. You're making your dream come true." Finn's words hit Liam like a flash of clarity. He was right. After years of repairing old furniture and doing simple jobs, he was finally creating something truly special. With renewed determination, Liam went back to work. The next few days were intense but rewarding. Every challenge overcome, every problem solved, was a personal victory. Finally, after weeks of hard work, the table was ready. Liam stood in front of it, almost unable to believe that it was he who had created it. The curves flowed smoothly, the wood glowed with a depth that seemed to capture the very essence of the forest. Mr. Alden entered the workshop, his eyes widening at the sight of the finished table. "Mr. Walker," he said, his voice full of admiration, "this is extraordinary. You've exceeded all my expectations." Liam felt a wave of pride and gratitude wash over him. "Thank you, Mr. Alden," he said, his voice tinged with emotion. "I couldn't have done it without your confidence in me." Mr. Alden smiled, placing a hand on Liam's shoulder. "Trust is important, Mr. Walker, but it was your talent and dedication that created this masterpiece." That evening, Liam returned home exhausted, but with a sense of accomplishment he hadn't felt in years. As he entered the house, he was greeted by Clara and Finn, their faces eager for news. "How was it, love?" Clara asked, noticing the sparkle in her husband's eyes. Liam smiled, pulling his family into a tight hug. "It was incredible," he said. "Difficult, challenging, but incredible." Finn looked at his father with wide eyes. "Did you finish the table, Dad? Did it look nice?" Liam knelt down to be at his son's eye level. "It is, champ. And you know what? I couldn't have done it without you." Finn frowned, confused. "Without me? But I didn't do anything." Liam smiled, ruffling his son's hair. "You've done more than you know, Finn. Your kindness, your enthusiasm. That's what gave me the strength to carry on, even when things got tough." Clara watched the scene with tears in her eyes, feeling a surge of love and pride for her little family. "I think we have a lot to celebrate," she said. "How about a special dinner tonight?" As the family gathered around the kitchen table, Liam couldn't help thinking about how their lives had changed over the last few weeks. Finn's simple gesture had triggered a series of events that were transforming not only their circumstances, but themselves. Looking at his wife and son, Liam felt a deep sense of gratitude. He had rediscovered his passion, overcome his fears, and created something truly special. and it all started with an act of kindness from a 9-year-old boy. That night, as the Walker family shared laughter and stories around the table, Liam understood that he was living his own miracle. A miracle made up not of grandiose gestures, but of small acts of love, courage, and perseverance. And as the sun set outside, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Liam knew that this was just the beginning. The start of a new life, new challenges, and above all, new opportunities to grow, love, and create beauty in the world. Finn's school was buzzing with unusual energy that Monday morning. Colorful posters decorated the corridors, announcing the new Good Deeds program inspired by Finn's story. The buzz of students echoed through the corridors, mingling with the sound of locker doors being opened and closed. Finn walked hesitantly, feeling the stares and whispers of his classmates. Some pointed discreetly, others smiled in his direction. He wasn't used to being the center of attention and felt his cheeks flush. "Hey, Finn!" The excited voice of Milo, his best friend, cut through the noise. "Have you seen the posters? It's all about you, man." Finn shrugged, a shy smile playing on his lips. "It's not about me, Milo. It's about doing good things for others." Milo rolled his eyes, but his smile was affectionate. "Dude, you helped a stranger and now the whole school is talking about it. How is this not about you?" Before Finn could answer, Principal Mrs. Martinez appeared in the hallway. Her normally serious face was lit up with a warm smile. "Finn, dear," she called out, gesturing for him to come closer. "Could you come with me to the auditorium? We have a surprise for you." With his heart racing, Finn followed the principal. The auditorium was packed. All the school's students gathered, their faces expectant. On stage, Finn saw his parents, Clara and Liam, along with Mr. Alden and Aurora. Mrs. Martinez guided Finn to the stage and turned to the audience. "Students, today we are here to celebrate something very special, something that reminds us of the power each of us has to make a difference in the world." She paused, her eyes scanning the crowd of young faces. "A few weeks ago, one of our students, Finn Walker, did something that many would consider small. He helped a stranger who couldn't afford her bus fare." A murmur ran through the audience. Finn felt his face burn, but he stood firm, encouraged by his parents' proud smiles. "What Finn didn't know," continued Mrs. Martinez, "was that this small act of kindness would trigger a series of events that would change many lives." Aurora stepped forward, her smile radiant. "I was the woman Finn helped that day," she said, her voice tinged with emotion. "I was going through a very difficult time, questioning whether there was any goodness left in the world. Finn's gesture not only helped me at that moment, but gave me hope. It inspired me to resume my career as an artist and to believe in people again." Mr. Alden joined her. "Finn's kindness didn't stop there. She inspired us to create an art program for underprivileged children in our community. And now, we're expanding that program to include scholarships for promising young artists." Finn's eyes widened in surprise. He had no idea that his small gesture had made such an impact. Mrs. Martinez took the floor again. "That's why we're launching the Good Deeds program at our school. We want to encourage each of you to do small acts of kindness every day. Because, as Finn showed us, you never know how a simple gesture can change someone's life." A deafening applause erupted in the auditorium. Finn felt tears welling up in his eyes, overwhelmed by the emotion of the moment. He looked at his parents, seeing the pride and love in their eyes. In the days that followed, Finn watched in amazement as the school transformed. Students who used to barely speak to each other now greeted each other in the corridors. Small acts of kindness happened all the time. One student helping another with their books, someone sharing their lunch, a group joining together to clean up the schoolyard. One afternoon, while walking home, Finn noticed Milo standing on the sidewalk, looking anxiously at a tall tree. As he approached, Finn saw a small cat meowing desperately, stuck on a branch. "He's been up there for hours," Milo explained, his voice full of concern. "I wanted to help, but I'm afraid of heights." Finn looked up at the tree, feeling a mixture of fear and determination. He had never climbed so high before, but the cat's anguished meowing echoed in his ears. "I'll try," he said, surprising himself with his courage. Slowly, carefully, Finn began to climb. Each movement was calculated, each branch tested before it could support his weight. Fear made his heart beat fast, but determination drove him upwards. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Finn reached the cat. With gentle gestures and reassuring words, he managed to catch the frightened animal. The descent was even more challenging, but Finn stayed focused, one step at a time. When his feet finally touched the ground, Finn was greeted by applause. A small crowd had formed, watching the rescue. Milo ran to hug him, tears of relief in his eyes. "Man, that was amazing," Milo exclaimed. "You saved the cat." Finn smiled, stroking the feline who was now purring contentedly in his arms. "I just did what I thought was right," he said simply. That night, as Finn told the story of the rescue to his parents, he realized something important. The courage he had found to climb that tree was not something new. It was the same courage that had led him to help Aurora that day at the bus stop. The courage to do the right thing, even when it's difficult or scary. Clara hugged her son, her eyes shining with pride. "You understand, don't you?" she said softly. "The power we have to make a difference?" Finn nodded, feeling a wave of emotion run through him. "Yes," he replied. "And it's not just about the big things. Sometimes it's the little gestures that make the biggest difference." Liam smiled, ruffling his son's hair. "Exactly, champ. And look what your little gesture has done. You've inspired a whole school, a whole community." That night, lying in bed, Finn reflected on everything that had happened over the last few weeks. The good deeds program at school, the rescue of the cat, the changes in Aurora's life, and that of his own family. It had all started with a simple act of kindness. As sleep enveloped him, Finn smiled. He didn't know what the future held, but he was determined to keep making a difference, one small gesture at a time. Because now he understood, every act of kindness, no matter how small, has the power to change the world. The exhibition hall was illuminated by a soft, welcoming light, creating an atmosphere of expectation and excitement. The once empty walls now displayed an impressive collection of paintings, each telling a story of hope, redemption, and transformation. Aurora was standing in the center of the room, her blue eyes roaming over the works she had created over the last few months. Each brushstroke, each color chosen, was a testimony to her journey back to art, back to herself. Her heart was racing, a mixture of nervousness and excitement pulsing through her veins. "Everything's perfect, darling." Mr. Alden's soft voice reached her ears. He moved closer, placing a comforting hand on his daughter's shoulder. "You should be proud." Aurora smiled, unshed tears shining in her eyes. "I am, Dad," she whispered, "but I'm also terrified. What if no one likes it? What if I've lost my touch?" Mr. Alden gently turned his daughter to face him. "Aurora, look around you. Each of these paintings is a piece of your soul. They are honest, moving, and full of life, just like you." At that moment, the doors to the hall opened and the first guests began to enter. Aurora took a deep breath, straightening her shoulders. It was time to face the world again. Among the guests, Finn entered hand in hand with his parents. His eyes widened at the sight of the paintings, each one more impressive than the last. But it was one in particular that captured his attention. It was the painting he and Aurora had created together that day in the studio. A brilliant sunrise emerging from a dark sky, rays of golden light penetrating the clouds. Now, framed and illuminated, the painting seemed even more vibrant and full of hope. "Wow," Finn whispered, pulling his parents towards the painting. "Look, it's the one we made." Liam and Clara smiled, admiring the work. "It's beautiful, son," Liam said, his voice full of pride. "You and Aurora did an amazing job." Aurora, who was greeting other guests, noticed the Walker family and approached, a beaming smile on her face. "Finn," she exclaimed, bending down to be at the boy's eye level. "I'm so glad you came. What did you think of the exhibition?" Finn looked at Aurora, his eyes shining with admiration. "It's amazing, Aurora. All the paintings are so alive." Aurora laughed, a sound full of joy and relief. "Thank you, Finn. You know, each of these paintings tells a story, and they all started with you." Finn frowned, confused. "With me? But I only helped with one." Aurora smiled gently, guiding Finn and his parents through the exhibition. "Look at this one," she said, stopping in front of a painting of a field of flowers blooming after a storm. "This one is about new beginnings, about finding beauty after darkness. It was inspired by the day you helped me at the bus stop." They continued walking, stopping in front of each painting. Aurora explained how each work represented a part of her journey of healing and rediscovery. Finn's kindness had been the spark that reignited her passion for art, and each painting was a reflection of that transformation. As they walked, more and more people joined the group, listening to Aurora's explanations. Art critics, collectors, and members of the community, all fascinated not only by the paintings, but by the story behind them. "And this," Aurora said, stopping in front of the last painting, "is the future I hope to build." The canvas showed a vibrant community, with people of all ages working together on a large art project. In the center of the painting, almost imperceptible at first glance, was the figure of a young boy, his hand outstretched in a gesture of help. "This is about the art program for underprivileged children that we're launching," Aurora explained, her voice full of emotion. "Because I believe that art has the power to transform lives, just as it has transformed mine." A murmur of approval went through the crowd. Finn looked at the painting, then at Aurora, feeling a wave of emotion run through him. He had no idea that his small gesture of kindness could have such a huge impact. At that moment, Mr. Alden approached, accompanied by a man in a suit whom Finn didn't recognize. "Aurora, dear," Mr. Alden said, a proud smile on his face. "This is Mr. Thompson, from the National Gallery. He has something he'd like to discuss with you." Aurora's eyes widened in surprise. She cast a quick glance at Finn, as if seeking courage, before walking away with Mr. Thompson. While Aurora talked to the gallery owner, Finn observed the people around him. He saw smiles on the guests' faces, heard exclamations of admiration, and noticed how people seemed touched by the paintings. "Hey, champ!" Liam's voice brought him back to the present moment. "Are you okay? You look thoughtful." Finn looked at his father, then at his mother. "I just didn't know that helping someone could make such a difference," he said softly. Clara knelt beside her son, her eyes full of love and pride. "That's how the world changes, Finn," she said. "One small act of kindness at a time." At that moment, Aurora returned, her face radiant with happiness. "You won't believe it," she exclaimed. "The National Gallery wants to exhibit some of my paintings, and they're interested in supporting our art program for children." The news was greeted with hugs and congratulations. Finn watched the scene, feeling a mixture of joy and admiration. He still didn't fully understand the impact of his actions, but he could sense that something extraordinary was happening. As the evening progressed, more and more people arrived at the exhibition. Aurora's story, and by extension, Finn's story, spread, touching hearts and inspiring others to make a difference in their own communities. At the end of the evening, When the last guests were leaving, Aurora met Finn again. She knelt down in front of him, her eyes shining with tears of gratitude.
"Finn," she said softly, "I want you to know that you changed my life. Your kindness gave me hope when I needed it most. And now, thanks to you, we can spread that hope to others." Finn felt his own tears forming. "I just wanted to help," he said simply. Aurora smiled, pulling him into a tight hug. "And you did, Finn. More than you can imagine." As the Walker family left the gallery, Finn looked back one last time. He saw Aurora surrounded by admirers, her face glowing with happiness. He saw the paintings on the walls, each telling a story of hope and transformation. And in that moment, Finn understood. He understood that each person has the power to make a difference, that every act of kindness, no matter how small, can unleash a wave of change that extends far beyond what we can see. With this knowledge warming his heart, Finn stepped out into the starry night, ready to face whatever the future held, knowing that he had the power to make the world a better place, one small gesture at a time. The morning sun streamed through the newly installed windows of the Walker house, bathing the living room in warm, golden light. Finn was sitting on the new sofa, his hands roaming distractedly over the soft fabric, while his eyes wandered around the transformed space. The walls, once peeling and faded, now displayed a soft shade of sky blue. Finely crafted wooden shelves, the work of her father, adorned the walls, proudly displaying family photos and small treasures accumulated over the years. In the center of the room, a sturdy and elegant coffee table, the first piece Liam had created in his new job, served as a tangible reminder of how their lives had changed. Clara entered the room, carrying 2 steaming cups of hot chocolate. She sat down next to her son, handing him one of the cups. "What are you thinking about, darling?" she asked softly, noticing Finn's contemplative gaze. Finn took a sip of his hot chocolate before answering. "About how everything has changed," he said, his voice low and thoughtful. "Sometimes it seems like yesterday that I gave those coins to Aurora at the bus stop. And now, look at all this." Clara smiled, slipping her arm around her son's shoulders. "It's amazing, isn't it? How a small act of kindness can trigger so many good things." At that moment, Liam entered the room, his face lit up with a smile. "Hey, family," he called. "I've got a surprise for you. Get dressed. We've got somewhere to be." Intrigued, Finn and Clara quickly got ready. They got into the car, no longer the old model that threatened to break down at any moment, but a new, comfortable vehicle, another fruit of Liam's new job. As they drove through the city, Finn noticed that they were approaching an area he didn't recognize. Large buildings gave way to tree-lined streets and charming houses. Finally, Liam stopped the car in front of a red brick building. A sign out front announced, "Community Arts Center, a place for dreams to grow." "What's that, Dad?" Finn asked, his curiosity palpable. Liam smiled mysteriously. "Let's find out, champ." As they entered the building, they were greeted by an explosion of colors and sounds. Children of all ages were scattered around various rooms, some painting on easels, others molding clay, some even experimenting with musical instruments. At the center of all this activity was Aurora, her face beaming as she guided a group of children through a mural painting project. Seeing the Walker family, Aurora smiled broadly and approached. "You've come," she exclaimed, hugging each of them warmly. "Welcome to our new arts center." Finn looked around in amazement. "This is incredible, Aurora. Are all these children part of the program you mentioned?" Aurora nodded, her eyes shining with pride. "Yes, and it's only the beginning. Thanks to the success of the exhibition and the support of people like your father, we've been able to expand the program far beyond what we initially dreamed." Liam put his hand on Finn's shoulder. "And that's why we're here today, son. Aurora has a proposal for you.
Aurora knelt down to be at Finn's eye level. Finn, you were the inspiration for all of this. Your act of kindness not only changed my life, but is changing the lives of all these children. We'd like you to be our junior ambassador. You could come here, share your story, inspire other children to be kind and creative. Finn's eyes widened at the proposal. He looked at his parents, who nodded encouragingly, then back at Aurora. I'd love to, he said, his voice trembling slightly with emotion. Aurora smiled, pulling Finn into a tight hug. Good, because we have another surprise for you. She led the Walker family to a room at the end of the corridor. Opening the door, Finn was stunned. It was a small art studio with an easel, paints, brushes, and a variety of other artistic materials. This is your space, Finn, Aurora said softly. For you to explore your creativity, to dream, to keep spreading goodness through art. Finn felt tears forming in his eyes. He turned to his parents, seeing the same pride and emotion reflected on their faces. This is incredible, he whispered, hardly able to believe it. At that moment, Mr. Alden entered the room, accompanied by a group of well-dressed people Finn didn't recognize. Ah, the Walker family is here, Mr. Alden exclaimed happily. Excellent timing. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce the young man whose kindness inspired all this. The strangers turned to Finn, their faces full of admiration and curiosity. Finn felt his cheeks flush under the attention. Finn, Mr. Alden continued, these are representatives of various charitable foundations. They were so impressed by our story that they want to expand the program to other cities, and they'd like to hear from you, in your own words, how it all began. Finn felt a moment of panic. Speaking in front of all these important people? He looked at his parents for support. Clara smiled encouragingly, while Liam gave a slight nod. Taking a deep breath, Finn stepped forward. Well, he began, his voice gaining confidence as he spoke. It all started with a few coins and the desire to help someone who seemed to be having a difficult day. As Finn told his story, he saw the faces around him light up with smiles and, in some cases, tears of emotion. He talked about how a small act of kindness can spread, how it can inspire others to do good, how it can transform lives in ways we never imagined. When he finished, the room erupted in applause. Finn was enveloped in hugs, from his parents, from Aurora, from Mr. Alden, and even from some of the strangers who now no longer seemed so strange. Later that evening, back in his refurbished home, Finn sat on the sofa again, reflecting on the day's events. Clara joined him, putting her arm around his shoulders. "Are you all right, darling?" she asked softly. Finn nodded, a serene smile on his face. "I am, Mom. Just thinking, all these incredible changes started with something so small. Sometimes I wonder, what if I hadn't helped Aurora that day?" Clara smiled, gently squeezing her son's shoulder. "But you did, Finn. And that's what matters. You made the choice to be kind, to make a difference. And look where that's gotten us." At that moment, Liam entered the room, carrying a small package. "Hey, champ," he called out, handing the package to Finn. "This arrived for you today." Curious, Finn opened the package. Inside was a book, its colorful cover showing a familiar scene, a boy helping a woman at a bus stop. The title read, "The Boy Who Changed the World with a Coin." Finn opened the book, his hands shaking slightly. On the first page, there was a dedication. To Finn, whose small act of kindness created ripples of change. May your story inspire others to do the same. With eternal gratitude, Aurora. Finn felt hot tears running down his cheeks. He looked at his parents, seeing the same love and pride that had always been there, now amplified by everything they had experienced together. "I think I understand now," Finn said softly. No matter how small it seems, every act of kindness matters. Each one of us can make a difference. Clara and Liam joined Finn on the sofa, enveloping him in a familiar hug. As the sun set outside, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, the Walker family snuggled together, grateful for the past, happy in the present, and hopeful for the future. And so the story that began with a simple act of kindness came to an end. But in fact, it was only the beginning. The beginning of countless other stories of hope, transformation, and the incredible power that resides in each of us to make the world a better place, one small gesture at a time. I hope you were enchanted by this story. If so, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Your support is what inspires me to keep telling fascinating stories almost every day. An incredible new story is about to appear on your screen, and you won't want to miss it. Click and see you there in a few seconds. I'm very grateful that you're here with me. See you soon.